the thing and
Yeah,
volumes relative to one another?
I think we'll be all right.
We'll be all right.
So we're like talking a little bit, and we're making sure we're not getting picked up by anybody else.
Who's picking us up now? I wasn't scheduled to get picked up by anybody.
The microphones are all pointed in different directions. There's going to be some audio bounce because we're in a small room with no sound muffling. So
This is yet a different room from last time.
it's the third. I think this is the third time we've recorded here.
Oh, it's the second time I have because I wasn't here last week because of life situation.
Oh yeah, it was it's where Bryant and Riley and I last week.
Indeed, it would have been. That would have been Bryant's debut on the...
You can move the mic a little closer.
On the freaking pod.
The flippin' cast. Yes.
I like how we have just unabashedly stolen that bit.
Yep.
From the crunch.
Yep. I mean, there are other things that we've abashedly done and since discontinued. Like, do you have anything else for the people? Because, you don't want to be that derivative.
Right. We don't want the...
We don't want to be...
the derivative things to be so integral to our formula that it's obvious we're just in...
So naturally we have a podcast where we talk about other people's work.
That is sort of just the world of podcasting in general.
Yeah.
Like, every podcast is just an homage to another podcast. It's kind of like philosophy.
Yeah. It's like every philosopher... Every Aristotle has his Plato and every Plato has his Socrates,
And who does Socrates have?
Socrates probably didn't exist.
Really?
Yeah. That's a popular theory out there.
Interesting.
I mean, you think about how ancient Greek society worked, and you realize that a 70-something-year-old dude with no money whatsoever could possibly survive just going around doing philosophy. Like,
isn't that what the sophists did, though, or is that later?
No, the sophists were aristocrats, and they used philosophy to influence people.
Gotcha.
And that was the whole thing that Plato was against. It's entirely possible that Socrates was just a character that he used in his dialogues to represent his own position.
Interesting.
But doesn't he write stuff praising Socrates? Or could that just be another part of
could just be part of
self-congratulatory?
Well, not self-congratulatory,
like
but
he's like setting up the ideal philosopher.
Yeah.
Because he himself is not the ideal philosopher.
Because if you look at the wisdom books, they'll have the character of wisdom and praising her beauty and graces and stuff like that. So it could be a sort of similar literary tool. That's plausible, I suppose.
Interesting.
Also plausible that he existed. So
yeah.
We may never
That's
know.
the thing about the ancient world. We won't really know what percent of it is real, but...
And because we've lost a whole lot of the literature from back in those days.
Yeah.
Aristotle wrote dialogues, but we lost them. So.
And we cannot find them.
We didn't even have some of his prose work that he wrote until some Arab translations surfaced in the 1100s. So. Yeah, if not for them, Aquinas wouldn't have had Aristotle, and the world would be different.
The more you know. I guess this is a preview of the
thing we talked about 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, the upcoming hopeful philosophy cast of some form.
Yeah, we're definitely not
workshopping.
sure on the details of it, but
it's in the development phase.
We're getting there. We're thinking about it.
Yes.
When we have time to think about it, which is hardly ever these days.
Yeah.
A lot of just stuff going on.
This is the busiest I've been in a while, which isn't saying much because last year was just a lot of sitting around playing Minecraft and filling out job applications about this time last year. Or no, actually about this time last year, I think I got hired to my now current job. So it's already been...
Really?
Yeah, it's been almost exactly a year. It's been...
Back in present day 2020.
Yes.
Right. That's our own.
Yep. We're owning that. So in present day, year from present day.
It is the most obtuse way to say it a year ago.
In present day, current year.
Yeah. In the moment in question. which is now.
When?
Now.
When will soon be now?
We're in now. Everything that happens now is happening now.
In
Go back
present
to
day.
then. I can't. Why not? We missed it when? Just now.
Yep. So, but yeah, no, I haven't been this busy in a while. I mean, work is just kind of work. You know, I've got a few things that have made me flex my schedule a little bit to keep the hours at 40 or whatever, even though I'm salaried, and that makes sense. But I just don't question it. So I've got they have their high school reunion stuff. I've been doing stuff for all week, and these guys have been playing about that, so I'm not gonna burden you with it. But I'm gonna have to do a little work on Saturday, which ordinarily is Grumpy James noises, but whatever.
There's a lot of times that are Grumpy James noises.
Yeah, more. I mean, and sometimes I'm grumpy, but I'm not actually like unhappy. Because like it's like Sherlock Holmes minus the cocaine. You know, he doesn't have a problem to solve, and he's just sort of bored and lackadaisical. But when I'm just kind of going about my business and challenges present themselves, I just sort of grunt my way through them, and I'm actually kind of not really mad about things.
So like grumpy grunt, not Tim Allen grunt, right?
Yes, most times. Tim Allen grunt is, well, that's a whole different...
That's more of a perplexed
and
astonished,
flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Which does happen to me fairly often. Just, you know, if I did that at work, nobody would know what I'm doing. Even though they all probably were old enough to have watched Home Improvement. But yeah, no. And well, I mean, personal life has gotten busier recently. Like, I mean, we live in a new house with actual people in it.
People that actually do things.
And live here.
And actively have people over here.
So there's that. It just sort of makes things busier. I have not watched this much TV probably ever. Because we've been, you know, Nathan and I have had our tradition of just kind of, we watch
Friday after you get home from work, catch up
our
on
Disney
a couple
Plus
shows.
show, XYZ and My Hero Academia, you know, every week, just kind of hangout time. But then almost every night somebody's watching a show or a movie here.
Mm-hmm. Most of the time after I go to bed, which is, I don't care.
To be expected. Yeah, these are probably shows you would, a lot of it's like daytime TV that
just,
I didn't watch.
Yuck.
Not soap operas, but, you know.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
I mean,
even like primetime TV these days is just garbage.
Yeah. Well, we're talking stuff from like the early 2000s in terms of 24, which
is
it's cheap Burger King popcorn TV. With
Burger King popcorn?
There is Burger King popcorn?
I'm mixing my metaphors here. Yeah. So like a popcorn movie would just be, you know, it's not really that great of a movie, but you're watching it for like Transformers would just be, you know, a popcorn movie instead of high art. And then
that requires alcohol.
Burger King fast food grade, like not it will give you, it'll fill your stomach for a little bit, but it doesn't last, kind of entertainment.
I would say that like in general McDonald's is lower quality but more consistent.
Yeah. Although, okay, before we get into the 24, I never watched it growing up, but apparently one of our roommates was like his favorite show. And once you've seen like one arc of 24, you've seen them all.
I see.
It's just a lot of Kiefer Sutherland just grunting his way through the... That's, you know.
I see.
Yeah.
I have not seen the show.
And suspense and so many old landline phone dial tones. Like there's... I bet you there's probably some database online where somebody has calculated the number of times you hear that sound effect in the whole series.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, internet is weird.
It must have been fairly popular because I think it was like from like 2006 to 2014, something like that. So,
I mean...
So it was popular enough for like the first 4-ish seasons, and then they're like, this show is selling well, let's drag it out.
Yeah.
Like they did with The Blacklist.
Yeah.
Which was a phenomenal show. My microphone stand is falling down for the first couple of seasons. And then they're just like, yeah, all of our planned content is gone, but NBC wants us to renew this show, so we're just going to jam it, and it's going to be bad.
It's like...
we didn't plan any of this. we plan to have the whole story resolved after like 3 seasons, but we just got to keep making stuff up.
Yeah, I think, and we'll get into this maybe a little bit later with the topic of today's episode, but with TV where they build a world that they fill with characters and arcs instead of just, one tight knit show or one
cohesive story arc.
Yeah, that they keep dragging out instead of like, you still have the same world that carries over, say in the Star Wars extended universe or in the attempted Marvel things. It's not dragging out the same characters forever and stretching the content. Like, there's only so many office foibles you can see with the people over in Scranton, or a heart-stopping terrorist attacks being solved by the most 90s government agency ever, or what have you. You have this world that's rich and full of opportunity, and then you just explore different pieces of that
with short little shows and stuff like that.
That way, you sort of hit the sweet spot. I feel like, depending on the show and the format, I feel like a sweet spot of 3 seasons with good plot and storytelling is like almost ideal. Obviously it depends on the show.
It does. Because there are significantly longer shows that have some fantastic storytelling that, are good, but I don't know.
Like, as what I think was, if I remember correctly, was the original plan for Stranger Things, but best example is probably Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, sure.
In recent memory, anyway.
In general,
go back and listen to that episode.
I respect a television series that has a story it wants to tell, and then tells it, and then stops.
And rides the success and still knows when to quit while they're ahead.
Right.
And then decides to make a spin-off series that was decidedly less good.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever watch Korra.
The live action thing, we don't even talk about that.
No, that was not Shyamalan's best work by far.
Nor is the newer Netflix one.
It's not good.
Is that going to be animated?
Or is it going
I
to?
thought it was.
Still?
I thought someone said it was out, but
I
haven't even bothered to look.
Netflix adaptations of animated things,
and it looks like it's going to be
not a good idea.
It looks like it's going to be animated again.
I believe that after the Netflix stuff went off the deep end and went weird, the original creators were like, "Hey, let's go make more series in the world that are actually animated and maybe good."
Huh.
But I have not heard much beyond that. I haven't been keeping up with that.
Yeah.
That is not the show news that I follow.
Yeah. So I guess we'll find out. I would be surprised if it was good enough that I would want to watch it. So we'll see, I guess. Honestly, what people, I get they wanted to try to go a new direction, but there's just something about the formula of the original Avatar series that worked really well. I think if they had used the same cast of characters and then expanded on them when they're older, that could have been interesting.
I've heard the comics are really good.
Yeah. But maybe they were trying to avoid what we were talking about of just dragging a show on for too long.
Right.
Because like when they start out the show, there's very clear like conflict that needs to be worked towards, right? Like,
we've done an episode on this show.
Yeah, go back and listen to it. But like there's an end point, from the get-go.
Yeah. It kind of reveals where it's going to conclude. It's the fun is in seeing how they get there.
Yeah, which
point A and point B, but there's a lot of stuff in the middle to get there.
Yeah, and we'll probably get to this show eventually, but My Hero Academia is kind of that way, but much less how do you say?
It's a lot more shonen manga in the way that it goes about it.
You have no clue. It could be years before they finally get to the central conflict. We don't know.
Well, they've already gone through, a year and a half of high school? They've only got a couple more years of high school
There's only
left.
a year and a half of high school left.
Yep.
The end of My Hero Academia has been formally announced.
Very cool.
The manga is going to end.
Okay.
And what they're likely going to do is do My Hero post-Academia.
They've also done a couple spin-off series. I was in a comic book shop and I'm like, wait, there's My Hero Academia Vigilantes about the earlier times, and this is young Aizawa? That's neat.
See, I like almost everything about My Hero Academia, and again, someday we'll do an episode on this. The pacing bugs me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
it's a shonen manga.
Yeah.
That's
At the same
just
time,
reality.
At the same time, it's nowhere near as bad as something like One Piece or Naruto or early Dragon Ball, from what I'm aware of.
Yeah.
That is true.
I will say some arcs are really good. They just draw it out too long.
And then some arcs are very filler, then they're drawn out too long, but they're also just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's not the show we're talking about today.
No, we're not. We're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
We are talking about a show.
We're going to get super serial about Disney Plus's The Mandalorian.
One day, 3 lads from North Dakota were bitten by a radioactive television, and with their powers combined, they are super serial!
So yes, at long last, we are finally talking about The Mandalorian. Mostly because partially we were trying to wait and see where things were going to go with it.
But there doesn't seem to be a season 3 until like next year.
Right. And so Book of Boba Fett's coming out, but that's kind of its own deal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll have to...
And honestly, for the longevity of our content, like, just having follow-up episodes on shows will probably be something we start doing.
Right.
Just
I feel
to,
like
more in-depth analyze smaller chunks of things at a time.
Yeah.
I also feel like something like going back to the MCU and doing individual movies that we kind of glossed over might be a good idea at some point.
Select films, yeah.
Right. Because we've covered a lot of the Captain America.
We could do like a
stuff.
best of series, but at any rate,
The
Mandalorian.
point is, Mandalorian.
Yeah. I think we'll have to... This can be... Consider this the beginning of our not really... not really... what's the word I'm looking for? Our disjointed exploration of the Filoniverse within Star Wars.
Right, this is the first non-movie Star Wars media we've talked about.
Yeah, because you have Star Wars The Clone Wars, you have Star Wars Rebels, and now The Bad Batch, which is still coming out. And pretty good so far. So stay tuned for more of this kind of stuff, because this is kind of our jam. Good stuff. So
Anyway.
Mandalorian.
So it picks up. To set the stage, we're like a year or two after the Battle of Endor in Star Wars 6.
Mm-hmm.
So the Death Star's blown up. The Emperor is, air quotes, dead.
Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader is dead. Luke Skywalker is off doing his thing, and the New Republic is being formed, right? There's a second republic after the Empire has crumbled that is trying to form and pick up the pieces and make a fair, free world galaxy for people.
Mm-hmm. So there's still kind of Wild West parts of the galaxy while the Republic's working on setting up infrastructure, and there are still little pockets of the Empire here and there in the galaxy that haven't been quite stamped out yet.
The other thing that there are pockets of is Mandalorians. So we pick up with a Mandalorian who is at this point nameless, but I believe his name is revealed to be Din Djarin.
Yep.
With a D in Djarin because it's silent.
Anyway, let's briefly introduce who Mandalorians are.
Right. So in the extended Star Wars universe, there is a planet called Mandalore, which is home to a race of warrior people called Mandalorians. They're the Boba Fett and Jango Fett armor guys, right? Mm-hmm. They have a long storied history that they used to fight the Jedi in the ancient days, and they tried to be peaceful, but then a rogue faction tried to be war again, and they're like, no, and then they're like, yes, and there's a lot of fighting and imploding, and Darth Maul gets thrown in there somewhere, and it's this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Point is, after the Empire, Mandalore's kind of in chaos, there's pocket groups all over the place, and Din Djarin belongs to one of them.
They're sort of an exiled people because their planet was pretty messed up by the Empire because they tried to resist and were kind of...
It was also messed up before the Empire from just years of war and stuff. It's like mostly a salt desert.
Turns out warrior cultures are going to war.
Yeah, warriors going to war. What you going to do?
It's sort of based kind of off of feudal Japan, which, I mean, I know a lot of...
Well, there's a lot of Star Wars that kind of is. If you look at Darth Vader's helmet shape and the fact that he has a katana, you know. Anyway, the point is, you've got this. Well, the Mandalorian's basically a Ronin, a samurai without a master in some sense. But
oh yeah, I suppose.
To the plot synopsis before we get now, can I start, James?
Yes, you may.
So we meet Din Djarin. This is the way. He is a bounty hunter, kind of like Boba Fett and Jango Fett, who is just working, doing his jobs, and takes all of his earnings home to his planet, where there's a small pocket of Mandalorians hanging out, just hiding underground from any remnants of the Empire.
Mm-hmm. And I think they kind of take turns doing bounties and bringing back, because the Empire uses their sacred metal Beskar steel as currency, kind of, and so they're going out trying to collect it so they can, build pieces of armor and stuff like that.
Right, because Beskar is like this pure, super strong steel that not even a lightsaber can pierce.
Star Wars vibranium,
Basically. So yeah, that's where Din Djarin starts. He's doing his bounties. He's collecting Beskar for his people. And he one day goes into the bar and gets tipped off that there's a guy that wants to talk to one of the best bounty hunters that he can possibly get. And so he goes into the back, and there's an old Imperial officer from the Empire. And he's like, hey, I have some Beskar here. I would like to trade it to you for there's a target. A target we want you to get. About 50 years old and is hiding on this planet over yonder. Go get him and collect him and bring him back, and you can have your Beskar steel. And Mando's
it's
like,
quite a hefty amount.
It is. It's a decent amount, enough to make some decent.
This
armor
will sponsor
pieces.
many foundlings.
Indeed. So Mando goes to his ship and flies to the planet and kind of crash lands on the planet, and gets help from an Ugnaught guy. He's a little short guy with a
who has
face
spoken.
almost. Yes. What was his name? Did they have his name in here? I doubt it. I did.
He has a name, which most Ugnaughts don't.
Right, because they're commonly like slaves wherever you find them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So him and the Mandalorian meet in this kind of desert, craggy rock wasteland, and Mando's like, "Hey, do you know where I could find this high value target?" And he's like, "Well, in
Kuil, that's his name.
Kuil? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Kuil points him in the right direction, and Mandalorian guy goes to get this target. Turns out he's not the only bounty hunter that showed up. There's an IG series assassin droid, which are like the tall guys with the cylindrical heads. If you've seen any of the Star Wars guys, he's a droid, a bounty hunting droid.
Mm-hmm.
So they both show up to this base where these, what are they, pirates or something?
Yeah.
They
Mando doesn't like droids.
He does not like droids. He does not care for droids. He's kind of racist.
Mm-hmm. But for a reason, we'll get to that.
We will.
Not to say racism is excusable, but in this case it is.
But droids don't have souls, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Well,
matter.
this is Star Wars. You can't be too sure.
This is like hating computers.
Point is, they beat the pirates, and the Mandalorian gets into the thing. He opens the pod where the target is, and it's a baby Yoda-like creature. Because Yoda is 900 years old, right? So 50 years old, that's basically a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
So the assassin droid's like, oh, my job is to kill this target. And Mandalorian's like, no, I'm going to shoot you and then take the baby with me. End of episode 1. Start of episode 2 is he and Baby Yoda go to his ship, but the ship's broken, so he's got to go fight some Jawas to fix it, and then he gets off the planet. That's pretty much the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot goes on in the
Does
second episode.
Does he fight the hairy rhino at this point? Or I think that's later, maybe. No, it's pretty early. Yeah, I think
the hairy rhino is in this episode because we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a hairy rhino he fights, and we learned that
it's about to kill him,
right.
and a mysterious force stops it midair.
A mysterious force? You mean the mysterious force? Because Baby Yoda is able to use the force.
Mando doesn't really know how this stuff works.
He was kind of a sheltered child.
Mm-hmm.
And over his interactions with the various characters, we learn that he is more strict and devout to the way of Mandalore than most are, than like other factions most people would realize. So let's see. Chapter 3, Episode 3, we get to the point where Mando gets off the planet and goes back to his home planet with the Baby Yoda and is like, and has to give him up to the Imperial guy in exchange for the Beskar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he does that, and he takes the Beskar home to his clan, but he's feeling all beat up about it because Mandalore the way of Mandalore has a very strict policy on foundlings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have a child that is displaced by violence and war and such, they take them in and raise them.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, that's where Din Djarin comes from. His childhood was ruined by the Star Wars prequels when when the Trade Federation and their separatist droids came to his planet and blew everything up. But he was saved by a faction of Mandalore known as Death Watch, which are bad guys in the Clone Wars, but also the guys that raised him in the way, the very strict Mandalore warrior way.
Mm-hmm.
So we learn that's his origin story, and now he's feeling really bad about giving up an innocent baby to the Empire, who kind of want to harvest his DNA and such, because Force.
Mm-hmm.
And midichlorians, but they don't say the M word in the show. They just allude to it.
Yep.
And
I think, is it at this point that the armor makes him a new set of armor?
I believe so.
A better set of armor, I guess, because he just has his pure Beskar helmet, but now I think he's got like a full set.
Right, complete with a little rhino insignia from when he fought the rhino.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a thing that you earn, right?
Yeah.
So he does counsel with this armorsmith head lady of this Mandalorian pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I did something very, very wrong. I went against the code. What do I do? She's like, go make it right.
Go find him and bring him to his people.
Right. Well, she doesn't tell him to do that until a bit later.
Yeah.
Because then Din Djarin goes out, kidnaps Baby Yoda back from the Empire, and takes him to... he tries to escape the planet, but the Empire's on his tail and not letting him go. And the rest of the Mandalorian clan comes up and exposes themselves to defend Din Djarin and cover his escape.
Mm-hmm.
So for the next several episodes, the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are kind of just floating around in space, going from planet to planet, doing various jobs to try and stay afloat and stay hiding from the Empire.
Mm-hmm. There's this one village. He meets these really nice people and helps them fight off an old Imperial walker operated by bandits, I believe.
Right.
And he's like...
It's on that planet where he meets Cara Dune, right?
Yep.
Because there's like a shock trooper in the Clone Wars?
In the Rebellion.
In the Rebellion.
Yep.
So she worked with the Rebels, but is now kind of going solo and doing other stuff. But Mandalorian guy makes friends with her, and they hang out on this planet. And they have this whole Magnificent Seven samurai kind of episode where they train up a village to defend themselves against bandits.
Mm-hmm.
There's an AT-ST walker. It's a good old fun time. And the Mandalorian is very kind of tempted to just kind of leave everything behind and live on this planet. There's some nice people there. The child can grow up amongst friends and stuff. But then, what was it? A probe droid shows up, or
something like that.
Yeah, an Imperial probe shows up, and they're like, "No, I can't hide. We gotta go sort this out.
Gotta keep the quest going.
Gotta go keep the quest going." So it's at this point, or a couple episodes after, there's just a couple other incidental things they do. But the Mandalorian, Cara Dune, and Baby Yoda go back to the planet he's from, that Mandalorian clan is on, with, I believe, our friend from the...
Wheel.
Yeah.
I think that's how you pronounce that.
Right. So they go back to the Mandalorian's home planet and meet up with the guy, the head of the...
Which isn't Mandalore, it's just sort of this bounty hunter base.
Right. In fact, there's another character who's like the... in the bounty hunter guild, and he like assigns jobs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They team up with him to kind of help root the Empire out of there and keep things safe, to kind of
keep their trade going.
Right, and also get the Empire guys off their back.
Mm-hmm. Because they really, really still want this kid. They haven't forgotten.
Right, they're still relentlessly following. So it is they
get into a shootout with Imperial guys.
They do. They leave the Baby Yoda on the ship with our short friend who's spoken. Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. It's like,
yeah.
I should know these characters' names. I just don't.
Yep.
I'm bad at character names in general.
It turns out that Kuil has taken that probe droid, the assassin droid, and reprogrammed him to be friendly now.
Right.
Sort of his servant.
Which the Mandalorian is very wary of, because it's like that thing was designed to kill. What are you doing?
And now this thing's prime directive is to take care of the child.
Right.
So they get cornered by the Empire in this one building, and they're kind of surrounded. And then Mr. Big Bad comes to be like,
Mr. Moff Gideon.
Yep. He's like, you've taken something that's very valuable to me, far more than you can know. Give them back to me now, or I'm going to kill you all.
And they're like, how about no? And then they shoot up the building, and the Mandalorian gets a shot in the head. Mm-hmm. Well, the helmet absorbs it because Beskar, but he's also not doing so hot.
Mm-hmm.
So they all try and make their escape. And they're like, come on, come with us. And he's like, no, I'm going to die because my head's injured. And they're like, well, take off your helmet, we can fix you. No. Part of the whole Mandalorian code is I can't show my face to anybody. It's a thing I can't do. And then but the robot, the IG assassin droid, nurse droid now, is here to be like, I can still save you. I have a medic pack and stuff. And he's like, no, I can't show my face to any person. And he's like, well, I'm not a person, am I? You don't think I'm a person? He's like, I guess there's the loophole. He takes his helmet off, gives him a Band-Aid, and calls her good. So now they're going through the underground tunnels trying to escape into the Mandalorian underground hideout.
I think in the meantime, because they were trying to draw attention away from the child, right? Kuil gets killed by these scout troopers,
and now they have.
I think the IG-11 saves, or 88, or whatever the character name is for this particular.
IG-88 is a specific one.
So he kills the assassin troopers and rescues the child and brings it to them. So they're in the tunnels now that the Mandalorians had used, but they had been wiped out by the Imperials somehow.
Right. They've been found out. They exposed themselves to aid Din Djarin's escape.
The only one left is the armor.
Well, that's a little unsavory of them to do.
It is.
And kind of weird because they've got like the pure Beskar armor.
That seems like a lot of work to remove all that just to facilitate someone's escape.
Right.
And not particularly effective when people are firing at you.
Well, but what I don't understand is how they all got killed, because they're wearing like Beskar armor and they're practically...
Well, if they expose themselves.
See, I thought of that when you first said it, and I wasn't going to say anything. But now that you've said it, yes. Phrasing.
The point is, well, they may be highly trained warriors, but there's also just sheer numbers in stormtroopers and stuff.
At any rate, they're all dead.
They're all dead except for the armor. I think it's actually now that he gets the rhino thing on his armor.
Something like that. I don't remember the exact order.
And she gives him like this last directive. It's like, if you want to make it up to our people, make this sacrifice worth it, reunite the child to his people. Mm-hmm. From what you describe, he sounds like a Jedi. And Din Djarin's like, wait a minute, the Jedi are like our ancient enemies, right? We can't go philandering with evil space wizards that we fought a long time ago. And she's like,
this is the way, philandering? Anyway, this is the way, she says.
And he's like, okay.
Gotta do it.
This is the way, I guess. So anyway, they...
Philandering. Where is your mind today?
I don't know. It's...
so they make their way through the tunnels.
They make their way through the tunnels, but there's a bit of an ambush at the other end, and there's a bunch of stormtroopers. And robot guy's like, hey, I'm going to go blow myself up so that we can escape.
Hello, John.
And then Mando's like, no, don't do it. You don't need to do it. And he's like, no, I'm going to sacrifice myself to save you guys. And so Mando, who hates droids, is suddenly grateful to this droid for giving his life to save them. So
as much of a life as a droid
they
has.
get into a fight with Gideon and crash his
TIE
spaceship
fighter
and get away. And then he breaks out of the spaceship with the Darksaber.
Yes, that's
Which
the
he
end of
has.
season 1 because he has the Darksaber. And the Darksaber is this whole thing. There was little history lesson on that. There was only ever one Mandalorian who ever became a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the guy that made the Darksaber.
Which
And
is
then-
an exceedingly rare black lightsaber.
Right. And then after he died, the Mandalorians
The clan,
broke into
his
the Jedi
clan
Temple.
has sort of passed it. Oh, broke into the Jedi Temple. And,
stole it back, and then his clan passed it down over the generations. It's kind of a symbol of the leader of Mandalore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ritual and rules that go about it
Yep. It's
It's
got a
this-
lot of stuff in the Clone Wars, which we'll get to someday.
at some point, and even more in the in Rebels.
What's up, John?
John has just been sitting there watching us talk for the last 3 or 4 minutes.
Yep.
Right. So,
So he's pre-listening to the podcast.
right. So season 2
day.
of The Mandalorian. I believe the first episode.
We do some more space western stuff.
do some more space western stuff.
It's
One-
good fun because he's sort of vaguely trying to find where Grogu's people are.
Right.
Because the Jedi, after the Clone Wars were kind of wiped out in Order 66 and all that stuff. So
There's not a
There-
whole lot of them left
there-
to be found, and yeah.
But he manages to come across these other Mandalorians on this one planet.
That's later in the season, though.
Okay.
First, we go to Tatooine. We went to Tatooine in season 1, actually.
Oh, right.
And we met another character who shows up later here.
We met Sigourney Weaver.
Right. But that's not the person I'm thinking of.
Fennec Shand, the assassin lady.
Yeah. They have... But the point is, in season 2, he goes to... He's looking for, first and foremost, for other Mandalorians and then for other Jedi, right?
Yep.
So he hears about a guy on Tatooine referred to as the Marshal who's wearing Mandalorian armor. It's like, oh, I better go see what's up with the guy in Mandalorian armor.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to this small town, it just in the desert.
Bunch of
there's-
moisture farmers.
Yep, just that kind of a thing. And he meets the Marshal, who shows up in Boba Fett's armor, takes off the helmet that is very not Boba Fett. Who are you? And it's like, well, I bought this off of Jawas or something a while ago. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And Mando's like, I need that back. That's
belongs to my people.
that's
You
my
may
people's
not have it.
heritage. You can't have it. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what. There's a sand dragon that's terrorizing the town, and this is the only thing keeping me safe from not getting net. So how about I give it to you after you help me blow up the sandworm? He's like, cool. Let's team up with some Tusken Raiders to take him out. He's like, no, let's not hang out with sand people. And he's like,
Because the Tusken Raiders have been kind of raiding us lately, and we're not friends.
communication. Let's do some cross-cultural communication with Mandalorian in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So they do this whole episode where they team up and fight a dragon and blow it up, and then
And get a little less racist towards sand people.
yes, and they all come together and it's the whole thing. So now Mandalorian guy Din Djarin has Boba Fett's armor on his ship, but is no closer to
Finding Mandalorian.
anybody. But as the episode ends and he flies off in his spaceship into the sunset, we see that
A mysterious cloaked figure was watching them.
a mysterious cloaked figure who is the same actor as Jango Fett in every clone. So
Mm-hmm.
take that for what you will.
Yep. What's his
see,
name?
the next-
Tamira Morrison. That's who it is.
Right.
Hey, look, it's Aquaman's dad.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's a couple more like space cowboy episodes, and this is the one and the next important plot episode is the one where they meet the other Mandalorians
On the water
because
planet.
on the water planet. In fact, he ferries a passenger to the water planet,
The not Camino.
the not Camino water planet, because there are more than one planet of a single biome.
The fishing village planet.
Right. So he goes to the fishing village planet, and I believe he's initially tricked by a bunch of fishermen who want his armor or want his the child or something.
Kind of both, yeah.
Kind of both. But then during the little trap that got sprung on him, three new Mandalorians show up and help kick their butt and save Mando and the child. And he's like, "Hey, thanks." And they take off their helmet, and he's like, "What?
Wait, you're not real Mandalorians.
You're not real?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're actually very real." Hi,
It's like, oh wait a minute. Oh, he's one of them.
You're one of.
He's the rad trads.
He's a red tread.
Yeah,
right.
And they're like, we're normal. I'm Bo-Katan, Kryze, or however you say that.
Yeah, Lady Bo-Katan is a character from the Clone Wars and stuff.
Her sister was the Duchess of Mandalore, and through events was killed, and she's sort of been the leader of the scattered Mandalorians in exile, trying to bring everyone together. But
also sometimes not.
Yeah. She's got a complicated history. But anyway.
Right.
She's here now with her underlings, and they rescued
squad.
Yep.
And so now he's met them, and they pull a heist on an Imperial cruiser, I believe,
to get weapons,
and also to try and get information on where Moff Gideon is, because Lady Bo-Katan has a very specific grudge against him, because he has the Darksaber, which
belongs to her, because she's the leader of Mandalore.
But she lost it in combat or whatever to him, and so she has to go fight him to get it back. So the next major plot episode after
she knows a person named Ahsoka Tano,
right?
Who's a former Jedi.
Just some person, you know,
some person.
Yeah.
She's like, "Hey, if you're looking for Jedi, talk to this person," and he's like, "Neat, I'll go find her."
I heard she was on this planet.
Yeah. And so the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, goes to that planet and tries to find her. And he does.
She finds him.
Yeah. She finds him more. Yeah.
And he's like, I was sent out here by these people ruling over this town of peasants to kill you because you've been trying to kill them. But I was actually just using them to get to you. I want to help. Here's this kid. He does the Force thing. I hear you do the Force thing. And she's like, yep.
Yeah, but I'm not a Jedi, so it's very complicated because Clone Wars happened.
And I sense in him much fear, so I can't train him because last time that happened, we
had an Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. Last time we did that one.
Yep.
And she's like, I know firsthand.
Oh, by the way, I talked to him through the Force, and his name is Grogu.
He's like, okay, like Dragon Ball? No, that's Goku.
If Grogu went Super Saiyan, I'd pay to watch that.
He does in a later episode.
Does,
yeah.
Except his non-existent hair doesn't turn yellow and spiky.
So he helps her liberate this village, and in the process wins. It gets a Beskar spear that the lady was using.
Right.
That was ruling over the town.
And she's like an Imperial holdout also.
Yep.
And Ahsoka's like, hey, I'm looking for setting up for my solo series. And because there's characters she's going to get involved with in that. But I believe this episode is the last we see of her in the show.
Yep.
She's like, hey, I know this Force place you can go.
He can use that to reach out through the Force and find any Jedi left in the galaxy if there are any.
And Amanda's like, neat. Let's go there and do the thing. And so I believe that's the next place they go, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
We go there, we do the thing, and in the process of doing the thing, we meet some new people.
Old people.
Some old people, but new to now.
Yep.
Right. So
new to present day now.
New to present day a long time ago. And
so Boba and Fennec Shand, he's like, hey, that armor you got in your ship, that's mine.
And he's like, you're not.
It belonged to my dad. And he's like, prove it. And he's like, I got a sniper on your kid.
And Grogu is all the way on top of the mountain doing his Super Saiyan.
It's like, are you real
meditation thing?
Yeah, and he's like, are you real Mandalorian? He's like, yeah, give it.
And he's like, nuh-uh. And he's like, give it. And then the Empire goes,
And he's like, make me. And I'm like, okay.
but then the Empire shows up. It's like, actually, another guy in armor would be really helpful right now.
Mm-hmm. And so they have a truce. And Fennec is sort of beholden to Boba because he had sort of rescued her and nursed her back to health. Because in a previous episode, Mando and this other dude went out to get her as a bounty, and they end up, quote unquote, killing her in the desert. But she didn't die because Boba rescued her. So that's why she's here.
And now she has artificial lungs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she and Boba Fett are partners at this point in crime.
And so Boba's like, I'll help you defend the kid. Or no, well, they fight the Imperials together, but in the chaos of the battle, Grogu finishes his meditation force field thing and gets captured by dark trooper droids who take him back to the mothership.
And Din Djarin's all like, oh, that's very not good. I need to get my kid back.
Mm-hmm.
And Boba's like, yeah, I'll help you out, and so will my friend, and we can get a couple.
And by the
of
way,
your
here's my
friends.
chain code that I'm real Mandalorian. This came from my dad, who was a foundling.
It's like, oh, okay.
You take off your helmet, but I'll take your word for it.
So yeah, and then they go recruit Bo-Katan and her people, and they get Cara Dune back on the gang, and they all go to Moff Gideon's starter.
Well, they have to track him where he is. There's the whole Bill Burr
infiltration thing.
There's the whole Bill Burr episode.
There is.
So
they go to this old mining facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy in one of the earlier episodes who was like an ex-Imperial
from the soldier
from season 1, right?
They did a heist together and tried to betray him.
Oh, that episode.
He got them thrown into Republic jail, and now he's in Republic jail and like, hey, we're going to use you for a mission.
Bonk.
Yep. We're going to use you for a mission. And so they break into this facility, log into a computer, and Mando has to compromise and take off his helmet on different occasions.
Right, because it starts off where they're trying to sneak in, and they're like, well, who's going to put on clone armor and walk in? And Boba Fett's like, I think they recognize my face a little bit.
Because he's like a clone.
So it's like, that's not going to work. And so it turns out it has to be Din and this other heist guy that have to go in.
Mr. Sam Adams, Bill Burr.
Right.
Actually, he doesn't like Sam Adams, but anyway.
But this is kind of messy for our Mandalorian buddies'
Like,
moral code, because he's like, well, I
have to rescue the foundling, but I also can't take off my helmet. But which of these is more important? How do I interpret my creed?
Right. It's like, is it okay if I just don't show my face and I'm wearing a helmet? Because that's kind of what he jumps to with the
at first
with the clone armor.
Mm-hmm.
But then they get caught inside. Then they make it into the mining facility, and there's a computer where you have to show your face to log in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why wasn't the other guy that did it, because why would the Mandalorian guy's face?
Well, because he was a deserter from the Imperials, and so that might have compromised him.
Oh, sure. But also, how would Din Djarin actually be able to log in with his face? Point is, he's forced to take his helmet off, and then an Imperial officer's like, "Hey,
let's eat lunch.
Come here, eat lunch with me and chat."
And Bill Burr's like, "Oh, I hate this guy. He was sort of responsible for my unit getting killed."
And so he provokes the Imperial guy. Kind of provokes our heist guy friend,
and spawns a meme format when he gets killed, and Sad Trooper also dies.
Oh yes,
just wanted to eat his lunch.
Poor
so
guy.
They break out of the facility and blow it up, and they're like, you know what, Bill Burr, I know you originally hated Star Wars, but thank you for being on the show, and we're gonna let you go free now and pretend you died. So bye. And
now they know where Moff Gideon's ship is.
So they send him a message and like, hey, paraphrase of what you told me in the last season. We're going to get you, bad boy. What you going to do when we come for you? And so, yeah, now they're off to the Star Cruiser to get Moff Gideon and baby boy Grogu.
And in the ship, they're extracting DNA and blood from Grogu and doing stuff like that. And there's a bit of a provocation trying to get him to
lean
almost
into the dark
side a little bit, which he kind of does a little bit in a toddler rage sort of way.
Yep. Kills a couple guards.
Yeah.
Moff Gideon's like, good.
Everything is going according to plan. Although he's not nearly as fun to watch as Ian McDiarmid is.
No. He's just one of the big bads from Breaking Bad.
Right.
I think.
Anyway, so our Mandalorian's crew,
because he gets his bounty hunter guild friend and the Mandalorian people to come and help him out,
and Boba Fett's on the team.
Cara Dune, Boba Fett's with them.
They got
the squad. They roll up into the crib and break in and fight Moff Gideon and
his collection of bionicles.
Yep, but the bionicles are pretty dummy thick, and so they cause problems.
Yeah.
So they're all barricaded in the bridge. They have taken Moff Gideon prisoner, and
don't jump ahead of yourself.
Well,
we get to, because there's a whole fight with Mandalorian and
Moff he gets into a duel with Moff Gideon
because he's got a Beskar staff and Moff Gideon has the Darksaber, so there's a bit of a sword fight. They throw fisticuffs, but it's swords.
And Mando defeats Gideon in combat and takes the Darksaber, and he's like, "Okay, cool. Hey, Bo-Katan, you wanted this, right? Here you go." And she's like, "Nope, can't take it."
Nope, can't take it.
And Moff Gideon's like, "You fools! You have to win it from her in combat." Even though Sabine Wren and Rebels just gave it to her, and plot hole. But we'll get there eventually. I don't know if that's been addressed yet. But she's like, "Nope, can't take it. This is a problem." He's like, "Yep, she's got to defeat you in combat." He's like, "Whatever, I yield." And they're like, "Nope, doesn't work that way." But they're interrupted by an army of dark troopers that are going to come in and make a mess.
And Moff Gideon's all like, "Ha ha ha! You're going to die, and it's all going to be worthless anyway."
And then an X-wing shows up.
Oh no, an X-wing!
Oh great, just one X-wing. Oh wait, there's a guy with a black cloak coming out of that X-wing.
Oh my!
And he's got a green lightsaber.
Well, it's hard to see the color of the lightsaber because of
but we see the green
cam.
lightsaber, and he's just wrecking these bad boy bionicles. He's throwing them all out and making the 12-year-olds rage. And he comes up the elevator and it's deep fake Luke Skywalker.
Whoa, deep fake Luke Skywalker.
He's like, "Hey, Grogu contacted me through the Force thing. I'm coming.
I'm gonna take him now. Bye.
I'm gonna train him." And they're like, "Okay." He's like, "Oh, he wants your permission to leave, Mando. You're kind of like his dad." And he's like, "All right, it's okay. Go with this. We'll go with this guy
because this is the way.
Yep,
it's your people. I know you like me and we're family and stuff, but you belong with your
talent.
People.
Without training is nothing. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Star Wars fans.
So yeah, that's
the end of the Mandalorian.
It's pretty much where the season ends. That's
where we are now.
I mean, the series actually ends with Boba Fett going in and shooting. What's his name?
Shooting up
Bib Fortuna in Jabba's palace and taking over, but that's just foreshadowing for Book of
Boba Fett. Yeah,
which will be a new series
coming out this year.
Coming to a Disney Plus near you this December.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we made
that's the eventual synopsis of well, it's 2 seasons of a show.
Right, and also multiple interruptions and dumb jokes. So.
Right. Par for the course. What do we like about Mandalorian?
It's a space western.
It's a space western.
And I think it's interesting because its format is very different from like any other Star Wars media and show. It has this whole western or like western vibe, which a lot of... But it also kind of has this almost Ronin Samurai vibe at the same time because if you look at movies like The Magnificent Seven, that was a remake of a Japanese samurai movie. So there's a lot of kind of like...
Which was a big inspiration for George Lucas when he originally created
Right, so there's a little bit of both. A little bit of just... It's very Star Wars. It's just good fun to just watch this guy fly around and do jobs, but also there's a kind of a really good kind of story at the core. I said kind of a lot there.
Yeah. And yeah, because there's a lot of episodes where he's fighting monsters. It's like kind of like the Witcher cowboy kind of a deal. Just going town to town fighting monsters and bandits and helping people and trying to get the child to.
It's like, hey, look, I know that Star Wars reference. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
But the cinematography is great. They used a
yeah.
sort of groundbreaking filmmaking method
Some
to
really
make
cool
this.
technology involved with that.
Yeah. So, because in most movies, you film in front of a green screen
Or you film on location.
but they kind of did both. So they filmed on a stage with LED screens that were synced to the camera, so you don't see the screen flicker. And so you can basically drop your characters into a 3D environment kinda and have the lighting and everything be correct. Instead of, you film your actors and on the green screen, then you stick them in a 3D environment you made. It's all done in real time. And so it creates it's a very photoreal, immersive style, and it just works super well.
The other thing
They mix it with practical effects, puppets and everything like they did in the original Star Wars.
That's another thing I like about it. There's a lot of... You can't tell where the puppetry ends and the CG begins.
Mm-hmm.
Like Baby Yoda and all the various other alien characters are like... Animatronic to some degree, but they're also like sweetened up with the CG.
Yep.
They did that a lot in the sequel trilogy, which I really appreciated about the sequel trilogy.
It's one of the few saving graces of it. But
Right.
And one thing I didn't even know until a while after is that even the spaceships were filmed practically just like they did in the original Star Wars with modern technology.
Oh, that's actually rad.
Yeah, those are actual physical models. So that's why
That is rad.
That's why they look so good. So yeah, the more you know.
So it has that very, very tactile, very lived-in Star Wars feel. That's just so cool.
And it's sort of, what's the style that George Lucas was going for originally? Because there's like the two different, like there's sort of the shiny sci-fi, and then there's sort of the grungy. We talked about this once before.
He wanted a very like lived-in future.
Yeah.
Like he wanted you to look at any given set piece and realize, oh, there's people that live here.
Mm-hmm.
There is a world that exists outside the main characters.
Yeah.
And to such a degree that if you look in the background of any shot in A New Hope, each and every character has a name and a plot synopsis and probably like several books they show up in.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that's great is about the show, and we'll get into like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau were the main creators, and they consulted a lot with George Lucas on the creation of The Mandalorian, and it's sort
They
of
worked with him on Mandalorian.
I believe so. At least somewhat.
See, I believe I'm not sure how involved he was
At
in
least
that, but
consulted
I know
with
Dave Filoni worked with George Lucas closely when he did Clone Wars,
Right.
And that's where they shaped a lot of the Mandalore look and culture and like
And in
history.
Rebels as well. And a lot of those, like the through lines, what Dave Filoni is really good at is weaving in like really artful, strong character arcs and storylines and different things that sort of fill in the gaps between the trilogies. So like most particularly with the Clone Wars, which is between episodes 2 and 3, and then the Rebels, which was between 3 and 4, and now with this stuff, after the events of episode 6. And so there's a lot of characters that show up from the old shows, like obviously Ahsoka, and storylines, like the whole deal behind the Darksaber and stuff. So it's really one of the latest examples of like the world building that Dave Filoni has contributed to.
But also, I feel like this show is formatted in such a way where you can go into it without any of that prior knowledge and still get it. Because Din Djarin is a character that was very sheltered for a lot of his life. You don't even have to know what a Jedi is.
Yep.
Because they explain it to you in terms that somebody who's never heard of a Jedi would understand. And their relationship with the Mandalorians and their history. There's a lot of depth you get when you have all the information, but having the main titular Mandalorian character be so oblivious to the wider Star Wars universe made it a lot easier to... It gave newcomers an avatar that understood as much as they did.
Because it seems like, this first couple seasons kind of came out just prior to and during the pandemic, so a lot of people watched it, and probably a lot of people were introduced to Star Wars through it. Because, it was sort of one of the launching titles for... One of the launching main selling titles for Disney Plus and that sort of thing too. So,
of course, there's also all of the Clone Wars and all of Rebels on Disney Plus, so it's that's also readily available.
Yep. I guess Riley, what did you like about The Mandalorian?
Yeah, you guys have kind of mostly hit on the stuff I liked a lot about it. Is just like the masterful way that Filoni weaves in these stories, these almost insignificant characters, and like, you know, was it back in the Clone Wars when he took Ahsoka from being an extra to a relevant, fully fleshed out character over the course of the series?
Even.
Yeah, a fan favorite even. So it's just like the way he does that is so brilliant, and I'm just so glad that he's been put in charge of functionally all of Disney Plus's Star Wars content.
The world and the galaxy and stuff. That's the thing about these other shows is like, you know, the Clone Wars and Rebels, even to an extent, were a lot more dependent on the films. But with this newer stuff, apologies for the construction noises. They're just pounding something over there across the street at the Newman Center.
Real professional over here.
Yeah. Anyway, they crap, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, what I was trying to say is,
it's influenced.
Yeah, it's more independent, but it's still the same world. So it's not like directly dependent on everything that happens in the movies, but it definitely is influenced. It's sort of the ripples of what happens in the movies reach little pieces of the story.
For instance, like Boba Fett as a character showing up. It's like, oh, he's all scarred up from
Luke Skywalker.
Or Luke Skywalker. It's like these characters are like, there's obvious ties to the universe. But it's not like impacting the core story. This is a side story, right? This is exploring and fleshing out the world and the cultures and the stuff. And it's just like, really, that's something I've always loved about Star Wars is the world building. Even the movies themselves, just passively through the set design and character design, they just exude a lot of like world building. Mm-hmm. And that's something that the sideshows can really capitalize on.
And sort of circling back to our conversation we were having earlier about, you know, TV shows and when they've overstayed their welcome, you know, exploring these different stories, but still keeping the storylines and weaving everything together. It's all connected, you know, is like a really cool way to kind of keep Star Wars feeling fresh and new while still remaining true to the story.
Certain characters.
And not like blowing out the scope of the things that exist, like the sequels did.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, yeah, 15 million death battle destroyers with Death Star nuclear guns.
It sort of grounds Star Wars in a
way that's more like
tangible way.
Yeah.
You get kind of down to the nitty gritty of how the galaxy works, apart from, you know, space lasers and highfalutin hijinks and whatnot. These are just down to earth little struggles in different corners of the galaxy.
That's kind of that ties into the next thing I wanted to bring up is the pacing in the show is actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Every other episode, like every odd numbered episode or so, is very main plot focused about, you know, the Mandalorian and Grogu and the Empire and stuff. But then like the off episodes will be
how they get from here to there.
Right. And they'll introduce a character that shows up later, or they'll introduce a planet they go to later. But mostly, these are just the fun, wacky hijinks episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little character building, a little character introducing, but like, and sometimes it's informational about how they get from point A to B, but they're like less plot focused and more. They're not padding, they're not filler, they're not fluff, but they're like
they are fluff.
But
I'm going to assert that they're fluff.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
it's done well because
they're
like
not excessive.
To bring things full squirrel once again, Dave Filoni worked. He was one of the writers, I believe, for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
You can tell by the high ground reference in the sequence where the sword dude in the Fire Nation is training Sokka.
Yep. But like, so like that's what happens a lot in Avatar. What happens a lot in Avatar is, you know, these sort of side episodes where they're kind of on their way to do something and there's character building moments and sort of filler.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happens a lot in Dave Filoni's
in the Star Wars stuff too.
Yeah. So it's sort of a hallmark of his work.
But it makes for pretty steady, consistent pacing with just enough plot going on evenly throughout, instead of like, here's a whole arc of filler and now plot.
Yeah, it's filler that doesn't meander too far away from the.
Yeah, I like all that, but at the same time, some of them just felt like Yeah, we just wanted to genre bend here.
Now we're doing a heist.
Now we're doing a heist. That's the episode I hated the most. I'm like, why are we doing this?
To introduce one character for
We
season 2.
Gotta get me crew together.
Although it does, that episode, the heist episode, manages to do is just sort of show Mando's sort of unflinching holding to his ideals and not wanting to cause undue harm to people, because these other people are kind of callous and cool with just killing these Republic guards and whatnot, but he saves one of their lives and stuff like that.
Right, whole honorable warrior thing.
Mm-hmm. And he maintains that.
So it is still character work and stuff like that, but it also felt like the most unnecessary episode in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Forgot to talk about Heist Guy because he showed up in that episode.
Mr. Bill Burr. But yeah, so I guess with that we can get into transcendental analysis. We already kind of tackled the beauty a little bit with things we like, but that tends to happen. So truth. What are some truths we can, as Catholics, draw out of The Mandalorian?
Don't be fundamentalists. I feel like we talk about this every week.
Yeah, but it's true.
But it's a
Don't
good
be
point.
fundamentalists.
I mean, don't be too loose with things, right? It's
Yeah.
hold on to your ideals, but
Be perfectly balanced as all things should be.
Yeah, it's like when you encounter someone who does something a little differently than you, like take their viewpoint into consideration and like genuinely think about whether it's the right thing to do or not.
because
At the end of the day, Mando concludes, yeah, I'm not going to be someone who's loosey-goosey with my helmet, but like I get kind of where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm. And he forgoes that when it's serving a higher purpose of saving the foundling, which is a more important part of his of his mission, of his way.
Of prioritizes the way. It's not like all even in its necessity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's what season 2 does the most. It makes him call into question the strictness of his practice.
And that's something that is brought to a head and vocalized by Mr. Bill Burr, the character, because he's like
sort of actively antagonizing him for the entire time they're trying to break into the base.
But he's like, so is it you can't take your helmet off, or is it people can't see your face? Because there's a difference. And he's like, everybody's got to decide how they're going to apply their ethics in the world.
And so
you got to do something to make you sleep at night.
So Din Djarin decides the face thing. It's a thing that I'm going to try and keep intact as much as possible, but when it's important to the mission and when it's important to the people I care about, the helmet doesn't have to stay on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing is protecting the child.
Certain things in a belief system can be foregone in extreme circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was saving a child.
Mm-hmm.
The Mandalorians get that children are important and should be protected at all cost.
Mm-hmm. Which, that's a definite truth you can get out of the Mandalorian.
Absolutely.
Protect the child.
Yeah.
This is the way.
This is the way.
And then Mando, for all his fundamentalist faults, he's you gotta give him kudos for remaining true to his code.
Indeed.
And and trying, even though like he doesn't throw his code out the window when he's faced with tough situations. Like he tries to find.
He has to rethink and figure out what
does the way mean for his particular situation.
Right.
Without changing it drastically.
Because there is only the way,
mm-hmm.
and it's just how you follow it.
Yeah. And so it seems like where the show's going next, this is speculation at this point. Well, actually, never mind. We'll wait till later.
It's retaking Mandalore with Bo-Katan. That's what he's got to do next because he's got the Darksaber.
He fulfills his mission. He delivers the child to the Jedi, his people.
So that'll be where it goes, and it'll be interesting to see how he applies the way to Bo-Katan and her people's ideals and how he unites them and stuff. That'll be fun to watch.
Goodness. What is good in The Mandalorian? I mean, saving the child, obviously.
And just the way he cares for Grogu throughout the whole series. I mean,
he starts out very cold and harsh to him.
What do I do with this thing?
But by the end, he becomes very genuinely caring and fatherly.
Man-dad.
Mm-hmm. The Man-dad Lorian.
Man-dad Lorian.
there's like a lot of guidance he tries to give Grogu in absence of Jedi teacher, right?
And push him to behave himself.
And push him to be better at a better version of himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The beast
Version of yourself.
There's a scene when
Get out of here, Matthew.
there's a scene when they're doing light training with Ahsoka, right? Where she's like trying to give me the ball, catch the ball with the Force.
Mm-hmm. And he plays catch with his little
He plays
boy.
catch with his dad because the Mandalorian's the only person he'll listen to with any kind of authority, because that's the only person he trusts. He doesn't trust any rando orange lady.
Mm-hmm.
But his dad, well, that's his dad.
And
But
he'll
then-
only go with the Jedi once he's given permission.
from Din Djarin. 'Cause it's like, well, and his willingness to give up that family for the good of another.
Yeah, and only he takes off his helmet and shows his face for the third time when he says goodbye to Grogu.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like a visual callback to Luke and Darth Vader when he was looking at his dad's face when he took off Darth Vader's helmet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously different context, but visual. They're like echoes. That go through the.
They rhyme.
Yeah.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
But yeah, so he takes off his face so Grogu can see him
Takes
before
off
he.
his face.
I mean, as far as Grogu's concerned, that's his face. No, he shows his face and takes off his helmet. That's what I meant to say.
You
To
just
Grogu
combined
when he
those
says
two
goodbye.
ideas into something slightly grotesque sounding.
Well, this took a turn.
This is a very different kind of show.
Yeah.
A man has no face.
Yep.
So I think that's like the core goodness
yeah.
of the show.
And obviously good versus evil, classic Star Wars stuff going on here.
Star Wars is usually very black and white with its depiction of good and evil.
And with stormtroopers and Darth Vader.
Right.
Um,
But also, there's enough gray area to have nuance, to have redemption for evil people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, there are actual things that are evil and actual things that are good. Like harvesting DNA from small children for your cloning experiments is evil.
Mm-hmm. And how you carry yourself when you're just a man making his way through the galaxy.
Right. There is objective good in the way that the Mandalorian tries to carry himself, even though
He does do a lot of killing people.
He does.
But not arbitrarily, typically.
He's a bounty hunter, so there's some of that involved. But like,
This is the whole Grogu thing sort of forces him to, because he has to sort of this was a target that I just got paid for, but then he has sort of a change of heart where he's able to recognize, this is a foundling. I need to say this is a child who is innocent. He sort of sets aside the bounty hunter side of him somewhat in service of
and that's
protecting life.
Kind of the other thing. The way of the Mandalore is a war. They're a warrior race. It's very warlike, but
Honor is a big deal.
There's a lot of honor involved, but also it's very much to protect those who cannot fight for
In a very
themselves.
chivalric way.
In this particular branch of Mandalorians, anyway.
Another, I guess we'll get into beauty. So with the Mandalorians, they have the Beskar steel, and their armor is super important to them.
Super iconic, super good.
So as he, with the armor comes different pieces of armor and gadgets that are sort of iconic. Cause
The jetpack, the spear,
this is
whole
stuff he
five,
sort of
yeah.
accumulates as he goes through the series, as through these quests he's doing, going down the path, the way he becomes more and more a true Mandalorian.
Right.
And he's got his sect is sort of purists, and he's got pure Beskar steel and stuff. Other
So it's
Mandalorians
unpainted
have sort of alloyed Beskar. So he's sort of, as he's following the way, becoming he's becoming the ultimate Mandalorian in a way.
In a
through his
way,
questing.
the ultimate icon of it.
Yeah, and so that's just great storytelling.
But also, in the way he interacts with other characters like Bo-Katan and Boba Fett. Boba Fett kind of has a bit of a change in the show.
Because he doesn't really care about his Mandalorian heritage other than because his dad was a foundling, but his only real loyalty was to his dad, who was taken for him by Meanie, Mr. Mace Windu.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's like you said, he has kind of a change of heart.
And up until this point, he gets a new paint job at the end.
Yep.
And it's all green. He just freshens up his armor, which was all chipping away at the paint and stuff.
Turns out when you're eaten by a giant space monster and then spit out, it kind of messes up your armor.
Well, even in Star Wars 5, his armor was very battle worn.
Yeah.
And very just, he had a whole bunch of other like accessories and trophies hanging off of him. But then after meeting the Mandalorian and after like us signing up to save Grogu, he cleans up his armor and kind of cleans up his act. And at the end of the show, it looks like he's headed to clean up the underworld of Tatooine.
Yep.
So it looks like it's like in his interaction with Din Djarin and the Mandalorian and all doing the mission and stuff, it kind of changed his perspective on life. Instead of just being a bounty hunter, he needs to be a person that would honor the legacy of his father. And
we'll see how that plays out in Book of Boba Fett.
We will. Perhaps we'll get to you when that show's over.
Anyway, so there's beautiful storytelling. Music is good. Obviously,
it's Star Wars music.
The filmmaking methods, like we talked about earlier, are great.
Oh yeah. Character design, prop design, set designs, just all very tasty.
Chef's kiss. I actually kind of hate it when people say that. Never mind. Although I understand the expression. Unity. What brings it all together?
This is the way.
This is the way. Yeah.
That's the thing they say the most. It's like
it's a quest. Well, the whole show kind of centers around how do you follow a creed,
right,
in the face of challenges. There's sort of the fundamentalist way, and then there's sort of like you throw it all out the window way. That's sort of the contrast with Jin and Boba, kinda, because Boba's, he doesn't really have a creed. He's just
abandoned his creed.
Yep. And so that's kind of
the show's called
there.
The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And Mandalorian doesn't just mean people from the planet. It's that way of life, the way of the Mandalore.
Yep.
So it's
weapons are part of my religion.
But over the course of the show, as we see Din Djarin accumulate the armor and stuff and become more the Mandalorian, we learn what the way means. We learn what he learns what it means to follow the way. So that's kind of the core idea of the show. It's exploring how to follow one's own creed, how to make like exceptions, but not such that compromise your core tenets of your belief. That kind of a thing.
Anything to add, Riley?
Nope.
Alrighty then.
We do a lot of talking. We done good.
We done good, boys. Can recommend. Good show.
I can also recommend the rest of our podcast. Where can they hear that?
Well, first of all, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Papists. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. And I guess, well, all I'll say about the number of this episode is nice. We'll talk to you guys again next week.
Nice.
Bye.
I have spoken.
Nice.